All right, so we're going to try and fill the space while we figure out what's going on with the race across the street. I got caught in the rainstorm, so this inadvertently became a wet t-shirt contest for me. But yes, we're talking about DAOs to kick this off today. And by the show of hands, it sounds like everybody already kind of understands what DAOs are, but this panel is more focused on, I guess, how you run them effectively, what we're all expecting to get out of them, and we've got a panel basically for people who are working in this now. We'll start with introductions. My name's Zach Guzman. I was a crypto reporter and anchor at CNBC and Yahoo Finance and quit to start a crypto media project that will be run like a DAO. So I'm also learning along with you guys from people who are much more experienced than I am here, who have been in the space, I'm sure, with getting their hands dirty longer than I have. So we'll just kind of start with real quick introductions on that. If Amit, you want to start.
Hey guys, Amit Mukherjee. I'm involved with two DAOs. I'm the founder of Chain Forest, which is a venture DAO. We invest in seed stage crypto companies, and we have a community of about 500 people who can participate in the investing process in exchange for SLCF token, which is backed by carry in the fund. And then secondly, I lead treasury for Friends with Benefits, which is a social DAO focused on culture.
Hi, everybody. My name is Tracy Bowen, and I am the founder of Her DAO. Her DAO is a women-focused developer DAO, and we're essentially a group of builders, and we're here to increase diversity and inclusion in the Web3 space.
Hello, everybody. My name is Zach Happ. I am head of product at a DAO tooling company called Commonwealth. We have just shy of 800 DAOs on our platform, many burgeoning, and a handful of big ones like DYDX. So I have a lot of experience, looking at and seeing how DAOs actually work and coordinate in the real world, or rather, online.
Yeah, and so I guess we're all coming from this, with our own different angles, but I guess we can just kind of start. Since DAOs are relatively new in the crypto space, right, as far as them being built out and tackling all kinds of different issues. I mean, I guess for people who don't know what a DAO is in this room, and it looks like it was about 50-50 from the show of hands, we can dig into, I guess, how it's evolved in the early days to kind of, explain what exactly DAOs can unlock. And from, I guess, the mainstream media perspective, a lot of people are interested in, I guess, the real problems that they might tackle. We've seen some of the projects out there, like Constitution DAO, that are kind of easy to understand, a bunch of people throwing money into kind of a shared wallet with a shared goal and mission. But once you move past that, I guess, what you guys see as maybe the second evolution as we kind of see this evolve here in 2022.
Yeah, I mean, I think the dirty secret is that a lot of DAOs don't work, don't make sense, and we're all still sort of really figuring out together what components of a DAO, the way that they operate, what they vote on, how they manage a treasury, all really work together. I think like Constitution DAO, as an example, if you actually look at the success of it, the legality of it, I'm not sure it's actually really an example of anything other than like a burst of energy to try something new. I'm not sure there's a lot of great lessons from that to take away for, okay, if I want to build my own DAO or manage my own DAO, what do I learn from that? I think it's a bit of an anomaly, and it's a bit of a distraction from like trying to figure it out. I think like DAOs are more transparent for sure. You can see the balance sheet, you can see the data on performance, you can be involved in discussions, you can actually influence the direction via a message board or forum or really effective conversation. You can vote on really material directions of a DAO. I think it works most effectively in the most numerical settings. So when really sort of dictating or allocating a treasury, it's particularly, I think it's particularly effective for these DeFi protocols where like it's like, okay, should the APY be 10,000% or 30%? Beyond that, I think the coordination can be really challenging, and I think a lot of people are still figuring it out.
Yeah, Zach, would you agree with that? Because
Well, sort of. DAOs actually change at the different scales. So if you have a group of 6 friends, that could be sufficiently decentralized within that group of people to make decisions for, let's say, like a book club or a small investment group. But as soon as like the DAO grows between 15 and 100 people, and then beyond that, in the case of Constitution DAO, you end up having to do a lot of delegation, and you end up with you need to have a fairly good incentive structures to get people to participate in the ways in which the group wants, or whatever the end goal of the group. So in the case of Constitution DAO, they raised a lot of money. They went and bid on the Constitution, and in failing to win, they dispersed the funds back, and everyone had a good time. But in other DAOs, where like a DeFi protocol, there's longer-term incentives to actually make a product work and sustain, and there being a lot of like financial benefits. So finance being a really great opportunity, but not necessarily the only opportunity here in crypto.
Yeah. I guess I can also maybe play the other side. A lot of people may be looking at DAOs from the Web 2, maybe Web 1 world might say, well, why do you even need a DAO? For a lot of these things, you could probably run it differently if you want to just kind of go through normal old structures of an LLC or a normal company. And really kind of unlocking some of that engagement from people who might want to join a thing passively. Maybe it's not fully running it from top to bottom, but some sort of organic bottom-up, anyone can join model. But I guess, as Amit said, one of the questions there is really making sure that everyone in the group is doing something and really driving engagement too. And I guess inclusion is a big piece of that too. And Tracy, I guess from your angle, kind of how that is different in Web3 with a DAO versus, I guess, maybe the old system and kind of what's being addressed in that arena.
I mean, I think DAOs really unlock a great amount of freedom for people, and I think that's why people are magnetized towards it. I mean, you could have like a cooperative structure. I mean, you still own a lot of stuff, and you still have an interest in the decision making, but I think people are really, really energized by this digital revolution. They want to get involved in it. They want to be able to kind of create new structures, new models, create new economies for themselves. And so I think that's why it's more exciting from that Web 2 perspective to be in a Web 3 kind of decentralized autonomous organization. And I think the way it's evolving is like, if you look at like the first kind of instances of DAOs when it was more to do with the code was the law, and everybody, was kind of beholden to this code, is actually become more of a human-centered endeavor now, which I kind of like. So we have operations on smart contracts, et cetera, but like there's a whole lot to do with human collaboration and the way humans work together and the power structures and the whole systems of organization that you need humans for. A smart contract can't really do dispute resolution very well because you have to deal with people. And I like the fact that we are dealing with people more now. I mean, people used to say, or people do say that DAOs are automation at the center and humans at the fringes. I think those lines are getting a bit more blurred now, to be honest.
Yeah, it does seem like all that kind of is starting to evolve in that sense. And I guess, the one thing is trying to figure out what's, I guess, legal and what regulators will be all right with. And that has been very difficult, I think, across the space. That's a commonality across the space. But specifically for DAOs, what have you guys seen, I guess, when you're trying to set that up? It sounds like you guys might be more involved with kind of, the investment side of things where you put the money in and you want to see a return. And there's a lot of securities issues that get brought up around that. So, I mean, what have you seen in terms of maybe trying to figure that out and finding the best paths forward without running into, I guess, any legal issues there?
Go overseas.
Go overseas. It's shocking because when I was trying to kind of start my thing, and it's just very basic, let's try and build something, it's shocking to see how many people are just basically British Virgin Islands or elsewhere, which from the US perspective doesn't sound very good.
Also, in the case of DAOs, Vermont has some really good jurisdiction, which would be the BBLLC, so the blockchain-based LLC. So you can actually have an LLC wrapper around your blockchain, represented the equity in your LLC represented by whatever your on-chain token is. All the wallets are supposed to be disclosed to the government, but there are a lot of gray areas in that. But having a legal wrapper to participate as a legal entity within a state, also Wyoming has some very friendly laws, but it's a little higher threshold to participate in Wyoming than it is in Vermont. But New York is historically not friendly, so I cannot recommend launching a security in
Yeah,
the
New York
Southern
has
District
been
of New York.
very, very crypto friendly.
Yeah, I think one of the key challenges is that when people buy a token to enter a DAO, they sort of assume that it works like buying, stock on the stock market, and it's really this sort of core unit for value accrual. As that DAO grows in value, that token should go up. And the reality is that there is no actual tie back to the token in most U.S. legal settings as a result. And so as a result, most of these DAOs are sort of creating a governance token. And so when we see sort of a market cap created by this token, it's really just sort of like this attribution, but there isn't actually that sort of causal link. And so I think like the DAOs that have most effectively routed around this don't promise that, but they also don't have another route for the treasury to go into. So I think like Nouns DAO is a great example where the governance token actually says, hey, we've got this treasury, we're going to vote on how to increase the value of Nouns' total and sort of just be successful with this project. But I think this confusion between tokens as an item for governance and tokens as an item for enterprise value accrual is one of the core issues we have for why it's so confusing and so challenging to make it work.
Yeah, and the other thing too, I guess on that too, is who's putting in the effort, and whether it's a centralized party of individuals who kind of started a centralized company and are building on it, whether it's that or decentralized, I guess, is another thing that regulators might bring up as well. When we talk about how some of this stuff is better though and improves on a way of organizing and bringing together a community around a shared mission, what do you see that kind of being pushed to beyond just, I think, a lot of examples right now are in finance. Me specifically, I'm focused on this in a media perspective and kind of looking at what happens when you bring together a community who might be interested in a show and want to get that off the ground and launch that together, and you can break down the wall between a creator and their audience and build something that way. That would be a media-specific, I guess, DAO example. But what do you guys see maybe as we kind of move past, to your point, just kind of value accrual tokens around that kind of value capture and see it in other sectors? Do you think that DAOs might evolve to reach other sectors like that? And where do you see, I guess, the space going?
I mean, her DAO doesn't even have a token yet.
Yeah.
And I think it was very important for us to build the community first. I don't see any point really in having a DAO unless you have a community, unless you've got a DAO to kind of, organize dinner or, it's like a club or something like that. So like for us, we identified income streams and identified ways to keep the DAO going, to sustain the DAO and build the community before we even thought about, tokens. Because the way we governed at first was we had a group of governors who were stewards, and it was essentially a bit top down from the beginning. But now we're just about to fully decentralize out and onboard members. So we've been able to accrue a lot of value in terms of the fact of our community is quite valuable because we're a community of devs. Mm-hmm. We managed to raise a lot of sponsorship and create a lot of value that way. So for us, having a token as a governance kind of vehicle or a way to kind of represent value is probably like an evolution for us, but it's actually not needed to build a DAO. I mean, a lot of people look for a token and a DAO, but it's not actually necessary.
That's a good point. Fair point.
Thinking about DAOs, I like to really imagine them as interest groups that may or may not have a treasury. And in many cases, most interest groups benefit with just a little bit of funds, and that those funds can be dispensed as grants or small proposals. So like in the case of, let's say, enabling a Reddit forum or a subreddit to have a treasury to then pay each other to do small activities in the world that they care about, a sufficiently large group of people can actually contribute a lot in the real world toward whatever goals that they may care about. So we're going to end up seeing a lot of interest groups that are between social clubs, between book clubs, between investment groups, really just being like, hey, I have $10. I'm going to contribute to this group, and I'm going to, then give my $10 through a process with friends to 10 people who are going to go out and, high five people, or give hugs, or advertise for, like, knock on doors for a candidate. In most cases, running like television ads for politicians returns very low yield in terms of votes, but a single door knocker might get hundreds of people to come out. So in the case of a DAO being able to fund people to go out and knock for a politician, they can actually make big real world change.
Is there anything specifically that I think you guys see as weak points? Because I guess that's the knock on DAOs, might be that you get very unequal effort, and the freeloader problem seems pretty significant.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard of this general rule of 90% of people do nothing, 9% are engaged, and 1% do all the work. And I think that's it's kind of like being a part of a high school group, or working on a high school project on steroids, right?
Project.
Yeah. I think there are some real challenges there. Having worked in remote first environment where most people are part-time, it is brutal. And then this idea that people can kind of go in and work for 6 DAOs at the same time. Personally, I feel overloaded working on 2. And so I think the use cases for when you can sort of have that lower transaction cost of entering a DAO and not, I think we're still sort of figuring out. And then I think So I think that's the biggest thing. And then, this alignment of incentives, because if the DAO votes to do something, if, a community votes for Axie to pay out sort of more incentives, is that the right long-term alignment for that project? I think that's a really important question. A lot of the people who own that token wanted to see it go up immediately. They're not really thinking about the long-term success of Axie, right? So I think that alignment is another question that people are figuring out right now.
I think in her DAO, our members are actually contributors, so you can't be a member unless you're contributing. So hanging out in a Discord is not, you're not going to make it.
How do you track that though? And can you boot? How do you boot people? If you kick them out, if they're not contributing, do you do
We
that?
haven't kicked anyone out
Okay.
yet, because we have, we've just basically streamlined this onboarding process where we actually, it might not be scalable if we get to hundreds of thousands, but we actually have an onboarding process where we meet everybody on Zoom, and we give them the rundown of what the DAO is and what's to be expected, and what working groups there are, et cetera, et cetera. As I said, maybe that's not going to be scalable when we get to 100,000 or so, but there is a model which says that every 100 kind of members, they kind of start another sub-DAO, so the kind of governance doesn't get too kind of thinned out, and it doesn't get really, really cumbersome. So we're actually looking at that as well. And there's another model, the optimistic model, which says that you basically just keep running the DAO until the members have a problem, and then you address it.
Yeah.
So I kind of like that model as well, which means that you can just keep on running stuff. But yeah, for us, a member is a contributor for real.
In terms of longevity of DAOs, I actually think we're going to see a lot of situations like Constitution DAO where there's a single goal for the community. They try to achieve it, and whether they achieve it or not, the community then dissolves, and all the energy then gets dispersed and goes elsewhere. So we're going to be seeing a lot of temporary organizations, not DAOs as institutions that live for hundreds of years. I can't imagine that in this current state of blockchain.
I mean, it does seem pretty interesting when you think about kind of decentralizing something early in its birth, if we want to use that term. Seems hard to do, because if you're really trying to, it takes time for anyone to even hear about your project. And then it takes time to really scale that project and grow, and as you said, kind of bring together a community that will be involved. And then, once it's out there and it grows to be large enough, obviously by design, the control by whoever created this thing diminishes, and then it's out there, and I believe kind of becomes a little bit harder to steer that ship. So I don't know if this is a problem that y'all have come into when you're kind of trying to get something off the ground, but I don't know. We started with a room half full of people who already knew what DAOs were. Maybe we can start to shift into the tips that y'all have learned on your guys' path to kind of get to where you are now. Some of those pitfalls to avoid, and maybe the right way to frame some of these things. If people in the audience right now, myself included, want to pick up some of those tips around doing this the best way to avoid kind of, I guess, what would be a nightmare scenario where you launch something and then all of a sudden it doesn't look anything like what you... Maybe that's by design, though. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I guess the right way to kind of scale these things and kind of stick true to what the mission is. I mean, if it's her DAO and you have a bunch of guys join, I suppose that would maybe be weird. I don't know.
No, it's not weird. We are not an exclusive community at all. We just focus on women, but anyone can join.
Yeah.
You know, anyone who's interested in building for the future can come along.
I think decentralization is a bit of a misnomer, and in a lot of cases, so decentralization can mean the back end, the underlying structure of governance. It could also mean a sufficiently large group of people. And there's a lot of kind of gray space between a small, medium, and large community and what we mean by sufficiently decentralized. So in the case of Constitution DAO, there was a very small group of people, about 10 of them, that ran the entire operations of it, but tens of thousands of people contributed funds and had stake in the project. So if we consider that decentralized or not, whether there's a core team or not, or if the project is run through a series of grants and proposals and there is no core team, people just contribute to the idea like an open source project, but then in most cases, most open source projects are run by one or two devs. What is sufficiently decentralized kind of mean? So in thinking about your DAO, if you're choosing to launch one, the decentralized part should not be a hang-up. Just think about how you choose to grow, scale, or let others join. Whether it's through equity, stake, or just, you know, enjoyment of the product.
Yeah, I mean, we were quite decentralized at the beginning because we had to protect the space. So it wasn't like we were trying to keep people out, but we were trying to keep the focus on what our mandates were. Some people didn't like it, but you know, hey, that is just how it was. You know, we saw that as the best way to keep to our goals and to scale out. You know, being true to our mission, and that's the kind of difficult part because a lot of people treat decentralization like a religion. So, like, if you're not decentralized from day one, day dot, you know, some people have got a lot to say about it. But for me, it's kind of like a spectrum. And for me, you know, as someone said, you know, it's best to do what's best for your community, do what's best for your project. I wouldn't really worry about, you know, the systems and the names just yet. Just find your model, right, and make it work for you.
Yeah, so I would probably, you asked for advice, so I'd sort of give, you know, two pieces of advice. You know, one is have realistic expectations. You know, if 100 people join, there are going to be some people who are just checking it out and just aren't going to get that involved, or they're going to say, hey, I'm here, I'm excited to help, and then, you know, 2 weeks later, you never hear from them again. Like, I think that's part of the DAO experience. And then the second is, you know, I think the best thing that we did at Chain Forest was we really created a very intimate experience early, and we started slow. We've never tried to, you know, boost our user growth. And so as an example of that, every single person who joined what was initially a Telegram group, we had a personalized introduction for. Like, they really felt like they were joining something that felt really special. And I think as we've sort of evolved, we've had this group that's been very loyal as a result of that. So, you know, I think the intimacy really helps, really actually trying to create a community. We meet in person, that's huge as well. So, like, you know, I think like a big part of DAOs is actually the community-centric nature of it. And so really actually try to create a community and don't expect just if you open a Discord, it's just going to happen. You really have to treat people, like, you have to really care about the people in it.
Yeah.
There's a funny organization here in New York called Costume Cult, and they throw parties, and they run in what they call...
Custom Cult?
Costume Cult.
Costume Cult.
Costume Cult. And they run in what they call a voluntocracy, where whoever's volunteering currently for the next 3 or 4 parties ends up having most of the say over how those next parties are run. And as, you know, people come and go, and the entire community is kind of stewarded by, you many people over the last quarter century. But as an organization, it has survived without any formal structure other than volunteerism.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, there's a lot here, and I guess that's the main thing is that you really focus on the community, you let people run with it, you figure out who's most involved, and I guess, you take it one step at a time would be, I guess, what I'm hearing here. The context of all this, too, and I guess I've been trying to remove this from the way I look at DAOs, because we talked about value accrual and some people being there for the short-term gains, some people there really believing in the mission. But just the context of where we're at right now, I guess I'd be curious to get your guys' take on what you see as maybe the enthusiasm still there around some of these Web3 and DAO projects when you're trying to attract more people into your respective communities, when the backdrop of everything else is maybe a slowing adoption if you read the headlines and the price movements around what's happening in crypto writ large. If you guys have seen maybe any less enthusiasm around maybe any of the DAO momentum that was being built, I think, earlier in the year. And I don't know if they're necessarily correlated at all, because you're really trying to build a community and that's not really so attached maybe to the prices of larger projects like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and the rest, and Avalanche.
Yeah, I mean, our DAO will continue to be enthusiastic because of our mission, not because of a DAO bubble or, that DAOs were super trendy, So like when people get involved with us, they get energized because, first of all, we're building stuff. When we go all over the world, we hack, we build products, we, mentor women. We're doing all of this really, really important, exciting stuff, And I think when people come with us, that's how they kind of grow their engagement. So I don't think it's correlated really to what's happening in the DAO market per se, and in a way it's probably good if it dies down, because a lot of people are making DAOs when you don't need to be a DAO, it's like just DAO everything, like you don't need to do it, stop, so I think it's good if we just get to a place where people make DAOs because it makes sense and not because it's trendy.
If your community is more interested in price action than the mission of the community, then the community will not survive the price action. So if your community cares about what you're doing, then the community will continue to care about what it's doing as the price of the token goes up and down. So at the end of the day, is there a way to really attract that type of person though, or because having a good mission and an interest group in whatever it is that you're doing. If you don't have interest in your community, then they're only there to speculate on whatever the project might do.
But even if you attract the right person, if you have a liquid token and the liquid token is down, it's going to impact the community. I've definitely seen across a number of the communities I'm involved with a huge drop off in interest in this bear market. Kudos to everyone here. Deep in a bear, we're here on a Saturday, we're going to make it. But it's definitely, I think, impacted it. And I think a lot of people are legitimately asking the question of hey, what here actually works and what actually makes sense. So I know my comments here have been a little bit on the sober side, but I think if we're actually going to make it through the bear, we really have to be intellectually honest about what are the things that are really, really working, and what was actually an illusion when price was going up and people made money, but that wasn't actually a sustainable thing. So that's part of the reason why I'm trying to talk really practically, what are the parts of the DAO that make sense, and what are the parts that aren't going to make sense long term?
I think that's the right way to think about things in a bear market or a bull market, probably, in both ways. I think I've learned a lot. And we started with a room half full of people who raised their hands when we asked if you had heard of a DAO before. I guess we'll see if people were here for the race or for maybe to learn a little bit more crypto, maybe both, probably both. But a show of hands now as we wrap up here, because we only have a minute now. Who here in the room now knows about DAOs? I think that's more, and we had people come in, so our numbers went up. But I think this is just the first panel on a long day of great programming. But Zach, Tracy, Amit, appreciate you guys joining with me on here. Maybe just one, since we have 50 seconds left, real quick, where they can go to learn more about your projects.
You can go to Twitter @_HERDAO, and we have a link tree there. You can join our Telegram. We'd love to see you.
On Twitter, Hi Commonwealth, or you can follow me @ZachHap.
Yeah, would love to have anyone who's interested to join Chainforest. I'll just repeat again. If you help us investing, you can earn significant amounts of carry just for introducing us to a company or evaluating a company in the tens of thousands of dollars per action. And so if you want to join, you can DM me on Twitter at Amit Mukherjee, or you can go to discord.gg/chainforest and apply for membership right now. And anyone who's here on a Saturday, you'd be an amazing member, so I'd love to have you.
Making money, making friends. That's what DAO's all about. All right, appreciate you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank
you
you.
guys.